So 2 shows in one night. Didn't know it was going to work out like this. Glad it did. Episode 127 is a good one. I really enjoyed this one. We're going to talk to Roger Sharp. Glad you're joining us. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast commentary. I'm a man out of quarters. I won't delay us too much here. We have an evening, a timely evening, if you will, with one Mr. Roger Sharp. Very glad to get to spend some time on the good old Skype with Roger. I think you're going to enjoy this. We talk about, obviously, Dutch Pinball, his involvement there. We talk about licensing. We go through some history that pertains directly to what's going on now. We get an update on what Roger's currently up to. And I can't thank him enough. And I want to thank Josh for kind of putting this together today. So I'll just let this one go. Enjoy it. Thank you very much. All right, I am pleased and honored to have joining us on Coast to Coast Pinball tonight, Mr. Roger Sharp. How are you, sir?
I am doing fine. How are you doing?
I am good. Thanks for coming on tonight. I know Josh and I were texting, and I was kind of reaching out to him, hoping that you might be available to chat a little bit about, obviously, all things pinball, but specifically tonight, about the situation regarding the Big Lebowski and Dutch Pinball, and maybe some insight as to your involvement in the project from the beginning, where you first met these guys to where it is now, and kind of open some doors, shed some light on the situation as it is.
Sure.
When did you first talk with the guys from Dutch Pinball? Was it this recent expo or before that?
No, it was before that. Admittedly, they had some projects. One, if I'm not mistaken, was The Bride of Pinbot.
Yep.
And looking at that and what they were doing with their revise, if you will, and whether or not it caused any issues. I was still at WMS at the time, and we still had ownership. We collectively, I still have to get used to not using that pronoun after having been with the company for 27 years full time. But that's really when our paths first crossed. You know, I met Barry and Yop and I guess the other guys at Expo. And whether or not it was, last year or the year before, potentially, that's when our paths crossed. And, then this year, I think, along with everybody else, wound up seeing Big Lebowski for the first time. When they unveiled it, I knew that something was going on, but wasn't directly involved in any way, shape, or form, and was just, one of the masses in Chicago standing in line to get a chance to play the game.
What did you think of the game from, you've seen pinball from, the heyday through the dark period. You've seen a lot of games.
History.
Well, not exactly, but you know that history, if nothing else. You know it more so than most of us talking about it here and listening about it today. What did you think of the Big Lebowski when you first did finally get to play it?
I was impressed. The feel of it, the overall geometry, and again, just speaking from the standpoint of how I look at games and let's call it how I analyze them, I was very, very impressed. I think the one thing that I was curious about was, because I knew that the game was incomplete, was how all of, we'll call them modes for lack of a better way to describe them, how all the different modes were going to be in play in terms of the various shot sequences. But I think from the standpoint of just the overall geometry, the smoothness of the game, the shots, I wasn't necessarily enthralled by the carpet because it tended to slow down the ball, and it's a direct hit. And again, without getting into too much complexity in terms of looking at the overall game layout, but thematically, the Big Lebowski obviously strikes a certain chord with the pinball community. I'm a fan of the movie. Did I think that this was something that I would have picked as a first selection if I was still at Williams Valley and we were doing pinball machines? Probably not.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think that the execution, the little bowling game down below, and again, I offered some feedback, some commentary to the guys when I was playing it, but I was very, very impressed. I think that the game just felt really smooth.
almost. I was actually.
And I don't know what you thought. If you had a chance to play it, I would ask what your reaction was.
Well, I did, and I think I said this earlier in this show when I talked about a little history of myself with the Dutch Pinball guys. I went into Expo sort of lukewarm on the whole project because I really hadn't seen much other than the first pictures of some artwork. It kind of blew me away for a first-time designer in pinball to put together something that did feel so obviously, Williams-esque in some regards, but yet very, very fresh and new and of the moment, if nothing else. It was really impressive.
Yeah, no, and the balance of the shots, the right ramp, that left turnaround. There were just some wonderful shots and feel. And it's interesting you make the comment because I heard that a lot from people during Expo talking about, God, it feels just like a Williams game. And I guess that's a tribute to the guys in terms of having put the entire project together.
I think so. So at Expo, I know you like you said, you were there, you played the game, you saw the game, you discussed it. I know that you sort of touched base with the guys at Dutch Pinball at that point because I was talking to Josh, standing in line for tournaments and whatnot. What were those conversations kind of like, and what was the general feel from your point at that point as far as where they were with the production and maybe with the license of the Big Lebowski? Because that's something you're an expert at, is attaining licenses for companies to use in pinball manufacturing.
Well, it's interesting that you asked because, admittedly, now that I'm a free agent and not wedded to any one company as I was for a number of years. And the announcement by Andrew Highway about Aliens and the fact that, yes, I did work on behalf of Andrew to secure that license. And having worked with Jack, who made the announcement as well when he unveiled The Hobbit, that, yes, I was directly responsible in securing that for him. Really, my discussions with Barry at the show, and the show is always, look, it's a crazy time to try to get any kind of quality communication going. Mm-hmm. Because you're surrounded by a lot of people, and if it takes place late at night, it's been long days and all the rest of it. And all I threw out to him was, congratulations, the game looks really great. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it's done. And if you guys ever want any help at some point down the road, if you're really serious about doing licensing and so on, give me a shout. I'm available. Let's talk. And that's really how we left it. It was just my way of, providing a calling card, if you will.
Were you in the room during their seminar, where kind of an infamous moment when Phil, the American of the team, the marketing guru, so to speak, gave his kind of pitch on the game in front of the crowd?
No, as a matter of fact, I forget what day that was, and if I was locked in, I won't say Mortal Kombat. I don't want to injure the memory of Ed Boon and John Tobias with the original one, but that's a video game reference for those who don't have familiarity in that world. Anyway, I think I might have been with Josh playing in Pinball at that point, so I was missing some of the seminars that I actually wanted to be a part of. So, no, I did not hear anything about it. I didn't even hear any of the aftermath of what transpired until, recently with some communication between Barry and myself, I became aware of everything. So fill me in on what happened, and no pun intended, I guess, with that.
Sure. I guess it's sort of.
I don't know who Phil is or was in the scheme of things.
So Phil was there. He was a partner in the Dutch Pinball USA side of things. He's actually an American living in Switzerland, married to a Swiss national, and he was the one sort of heading the sales and marketing side of things. He was taking payments from U.S. citizens on the games, et cetera, and he became the voice for the company at Expo, and he gave the seminar talk, which was very different than most seminars that I've seen at Expo or any other pinball show, in that he very much called out the competitors and challenged them and said that we're here. Some people took offense or took at least notice of some colorful language which we don't usually see much of. At a full packed room at the hotel at the seminar, and if nothing else, I think that the general feeling is a few people might have been a little bit put off by it, but it was different, and people sort of took attention and listened up and wanted to hear what's next after that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and in defense to Phil and his speech there, a lot of the language I think sort of was a play off of the movie and some of the intellectual property in the movie. That's lots of F-bombs and whatever.
Yeah, that's another part that I guess I'm not necessarily thrilled with in my own Puritan ethic and the way I view pinball just in general. That I've never felt comfortable with potentially some of the themes that people have considered, as well as some of the language.
Sure.
And I know there's home ROMs for Terminator, and everybody can delight in terms of Arnold and what he wound up saying off script.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I guess I've always viewed pinball in a much purer sense. So I'm sorry to hear that Phil, I guess, chose to play off of and embellish the legacy of the Big Lebowski.
So we fast forward, and early November, Phil left the company, and now I think Phil had sort of become the go-between between Universal Pictures, who owns the licensing rights to the Big Lebowski, and Dutch Pinball. And when he left, I think the company, Barry and Yop, sort of felt a little disconnected there, and now that the happenings of the past couple days on Pinside, with Phil sort of trying to get out completely, and he's released a lot of business insider particulars about the company to Pinside in attempts to try and kind of lay all his cards on the table and get out. That is when we now hear that Dutch Pinball has called you, reached out to you, and said, can you be our kind of current go-between to Universal Pictures? And I'm assuming that's based on you already having relations with them, and obviously your experience in the licensing side of things. What has that been like the past few days?
Past few days have been somewhat surprising, in all honesty, coming out of left field. Barry and I had some communication after Expo, and I had IAPA down in Florida, Thanksgiving. I mean, there's a lot of things that wind up transpiring when around the time of Pinball Expo. My apologies for a phone that's ringing in the background.
That's
so
all right.
You'll stop momentarily. So we had exchanged some communication, and again, really just a follow up to the conversation that we had at Expo, which was, let me know if there's ever anything that I can do to help you. I mean, it looks like a good start. Didn't know anything about the process and where they were at with anything, but it looked like the game was, pretty far along, and all they were doing was, finishing up the overall gameplay, game rules, and what have you. To that end, that's when Barry and I had an exchange. I guess we talked and exchanged emails a couple of days ago about some of the issues, again, that I wasn't aware of, and I'm kind of hearing it from you fresh, as well as what Barry was able to relay to me, that I guess there was a falling out with Phil. And I don't know what Phil's role was per se as a partner or anything else. I also don't know the reasons, and maybe they've been made public, and I'm just not aware of them. I don't know the reasons for the breakup, if you will, and, what Phil was either hoping to gain or, to your point, hoping to distance himself from. So I do know that there were some, issues ongoing in regard to the game not being totally, completely finished and finalized and approved with Universal. So Barry and I talked about that process. I think some of the speculation from what I've heard about likeness rights, etc., those are not true. I can say that unequivocally. The elements that are in the game are elements, whether they're visual or anything else, that have been approved. And it's really just a question of going through the steps and the stages of what every project does. And look, it's what I wound up doing for 12 and a half years at Williams Bally for all the licensed games, and subsequently with WMS for slot machines and all my other clients, whether it's Raw Thrills with Fast and Furious as a sit-down game or some of the novelty redemption stuff that I've worked on for the Baytex and the Coastal Amusements and the ICEs of the world. And these, again, are just companies within the coin-operated amusement game industry. But having said that, I mean, there are steps and stages that you have to go through. And as Barry told me and shared with me, he had been taking on some of that anyway, in addition to whatever Phil was providing as a point person in terms of the submission process through Universal, and just needed to have somebody, I guess, closer at hand who has experience in the field, because Barry admitted, this is something that is new to him when it comes to, working through the license. And I contacted Universal, and I know the people there. We've had, a great relationship for, far too many years. I won't go back over 20 years, but because it ages me and as well as aging the people that I work with. And I think the saving grace for them was, thankfully, I was located in the States. I mean, there's just a 2-hour difference between me in Chicago and them in California, as opposed to a 9-hour difference with Barry over, I guess, in the Netherlands or wherever they are. And again, my apologies for my ignorance on that. So that was a process. And, talking to Barry, understanding that there was, I guess, this thunderstorm that was taking place out in the pinball community. And he had I think we had talked when he was still in New York for the unveiling at Modern Pinball NYC, which I gather went incredibly well.
Yep.
Good response and everything else. I talked to Steve Epstein about it, and he was just thrilled. I think that, from Barry's standpoint, what he shared with me was the fact that there was this breakup and this outpouring of information that, I guess, look, and I'm getting this all second or third hand, I guess the amount of information that has been revealed to the public, some of it was sensitive internal documentation. It almost sounds the way Sony is now living through the hacking scandal that's taken place with a lot of sensitive files corresponding and so on.
That's a great
being
point.
made public, that somehow Phil was doing this cathartic process of wanting to unburden himself about anything and everything, whether it was dirty laundry or clean laundry that hadn't been folded yet. And, Barry's comment to me was, would it be okay if he made an announcement that I was helping? And I was like, sure. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. As I said before, I'm not tied into anyone. This is what I do for a living. This is what Sharp Communications is all about. It's a creative services agency, and, my company, and I work with other companies and other individuals on many projects. My company does everything from brand licensing to marketing to advertising and promotion and PR. And it's not an advertisement. It's just a statement of fact. So, when Barry reached out to me, I was like, sure, let me take this on and see what I can do. So that's really been, the process. As I said, the communication, if there's concern, fear about the legitimacy of the project, or the project is now going to blow up or anything else, I can state, at least from my standpoint and from the conversation that I've had with Universal, that is far from the case. If Dutch Pinball decides that they want to do something else, that's out of my hands. I'm not aware of it, and I don't know if there's anything that you've heard directly or indirectly about whatever decisions they may or may not be making. But specific to the Big Lebowski, I don't see there being any holdups. I think that, again, it's just more of a formal submissions for a variety of content. Still, some of it is still in what I would call final development in terms of crafting the overall choreography of the game, whether it's video footage, audio outtakes, or anything else for that matter, as well as finished art. But that submission process that I've been made aware of, it goes back to March, which surprised me. I didn't realize that the project, well, again, I mentioned before, I revealed before, unfortunately, I really don't stay on top of everything. So when Barry shared with me much of the give and take with Universal's approval process, I was dumbfounded. It was like, wow, all this stuff has been submitted. Here's this paper trail. Here's the comments back. This is approved. This is approved. This is needs to be resubmitted, but it's approved to date. Everything was all buttoned up. So it's just a question, again, of my stepping in and continuing the process.
That's fascinating. One thing that I think's come up to me and has been asked from listeners over and over in the last couple of days is there a problem, and maybe not specifically even just this situation, but in general, when a company's licensing a theme like a movie and they build a prototype? Because there's been a lot of discussion around the fact that Dutch Pinball did build prototypes when they did and brought them when they did. Is that something a license holder is going to take issue with, or is that generally accepted practice?
I think that they absolutely can take issue with it if you haven't informed them ahead of time.
And have you seen anything to point towards that here?
Through that, I mean, I can share with you that the Addams Family, which was there for the premiere, and I flew out with Larry and Pat and the team, and we were finishing artwork on the spot. The game hadn't been approved, and we already had 5 machines out there for the movie premiere. Terminator 2, when I flew out with Doug Watson, the artist on it, that game hadn't been completely approved. And yet there we were for a special event that James Cameron and Larry Kazanoff were staging, and the pinball was kind of front and center. So is that something that happens all the time? No. Does it happen depending on timing of events? And those events may be, we'll call it licensor-based, because admittedly everything isn't always done with studios. There's agencies and so on that exist out there. But as long as you are informing folks that this is what you're going to do, and I've seen the correspondence and communication, and the direct conversation that I had with Universal on whatever day it was. What's today? Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
Everything has happened so quickly.
It has.
Maybe it was yesterday? God. Number one, I feel somewhat old for the moment, because it's like, God, am I really losing brain cells? and it's this early onset of some type of memory lapse. I think it was tomorrow. I think it was yesterday that I had the conversation with him. It could have been Friday. I know that it wasn't over the weekend. But I asked directly, because that was something that I had heard as part of the rumors, even from my son Josh, who said, well, supposedly what I'm hearing is that they weren't supposed to unveil the game. And I asked directly, I said, was that a problem or an issue? And they said, no. Not at all. I mean, they were aware of it. They were aware that the game was going to be at Pinball Expo. They were aware of modern pinball. And not for me. I mean, those things obviously had transpired long before my brief engagement, if you will.
Sure.
I think the only thing, to answer your question more fully, and it's not necessarily directed specifically at Big Lebowski, it's with everything. And, if you talk to, Gary Stern and Jody and the folks at Stern, I'm sure that they can recount the same. And even with Jack, you have an obligation to work as closely as you possibly can with, in quotes, your partner. And I think that the level of communications that you have, whether it's for securing assets, getting an understanding of what those assets are, to make a project happen, working through the approval cycles, and some of the companies and studios have their own embedded system. With Universal, their approval process is Strata, and you submit through there, you have a job number and so on and so forth, and you get your feedback and you go back and forth accordingly. And then you deal directly with the people who are kind of overseeing approvals for the category. Because for bigger companies and bigger studios, you have different individuals that oversee different types of products. So the person working with us for what we'll call the electronic/game category isn't necessarily overseeing any of the approvals for T-shirts or for action figures, because you have just the depth and breadth of what exists specifically with studios, with feature films, and so on. So anyway, as long as you're keeping that communication going, I think one of the things, and I mentioned it to Barry, as a follow-up, was let's make certain, copy me on everything going forward, that you submit everything, because as they were only concerned with was some of the information that was being put out there And what Universal didn't realize, it wasn't being put out directly by Dutch Pinball. It was being put out by the news groups and so on. Needs to pass their muster, needs to be put through for approval. So that was the only hiccup. And truthfully, Universal was fine with the process. I see myself coming in as a Band-Aid rather than a tourniquet, if that is
absolutely. No, that's well put. That's
reasonable analogy of sorts.
I think a lot of people are going to be very glad to hear that, because a lot of people have thousands of dollars sort of tied up already in pre-order positions on this game.
Right.
Yeah.
And I understand, and again, second and third hand, that people are asking for money back. It's an endeavor gone south. It's not going to happen, and there's all this other stuff that's going on, which I find it surprising on some levels, and maybe not. We have a situation. I don't want to stray off topic necessarily, but we have a situation now where you have effectively two major manufacturers, and you have all these boutique shops that have opened up, and I'm so gladdened to see that there are individuals that are taking upon themselves to try to build pinball machines. And I think that everybody is always skittish. Either they want everybody to succeed or they want everybody to fail. I don't understand. I don't understand the latter. I really don't. If you are a fan and enthusiast of pinball, wouldn't you want anybody and everybody to succeed? And instead of making pot shots and declarations that are potentially injurious, that part I don't understand. Now, I understand it from the standpoint of people who have invested money in some way, shape, or form, but that was a decision that they made. And if there is buyer's regret or remorse, then hold back, then don't do it. Wait. Look, I know that Jack got enough crap thrown at him because it took Wizard of Oz so long to come to the marketplace. Well, you kind of live and learn on the fly with that, and I don't think it was practical or realistic to assume that the timelines that he thought he was going to be able to make were realistic and practical. I know that there's been, some concern as to, what Rick and Doug are doing with Medieval Madness. Is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? No, they said the spring, they said the summer, they said the fall, they said the winter. I mean, it's like, my God, sit back, and I understand that people are, anxious, but, I don't understand what it is to be so hypercritical. And maybe that's just me being so totally naive. I don't understand it.
I don't know.
I'm a fan of all of this stuff. And my heart goes out to the individuals and companies that, may be struggling, haven't found their way, are learning on the fly. And it's like I'm willing to give them, the grace period. I'm willing to see, can you survive? Because I think that, the more companies that are involved in a category, I don't care what the category is, car manufacturing, the more companies there are, the competition breeds better product. And I think if you take a look historically at, the life cycle of Stern Pinball, it has been an incredible and very, very positive movement by them within the last 3 to 4 years compared to what they had done for the previous 10 after Williams Bally shut down.
Definitely.
And I think that some of that was necessity, technology changes, market demands change, but I think as well it was the acknowledgement that, it's time for us to raise our game. And I'm not saying that as a knock. I think that everybody would agree that the quality, durability, and excellence of their product in current, times far exceeds what was available back in 2001, 2002. So again, I went off topic a little bit.
No, that's okay. I like it.
I think it holds some semblance of truth, if you will, when it comes to analyzing and looking at and making value judgments about Dutch Pinball or any of the other companies.
I think you're exactly right. In fact, you're making me sound kind of smart, because a lot of the things that you just said, I feel like I have covered in the early part of the show just in my own way. And I think the difference of what you're seeing is, and I said this earlier in the show, that internet time moves much faster than real world time.
My
And
God, does it?
people, yeah, and that people that post on, Pinside and forums, they want everything to just answer it now. Everything has to be now, 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 go, go, go. And when they don't get that, it's death to them. It's they're done. They're blowing up. They're gone. And I don't even know if they wish them to fail or they just think it's going to fail since they didn't get their instant gratification 5 minutes ago.
Or, and maybe this is also partially true. It's always been a very small community when it comes to pinball manufacturing. And look, I can go back to, first game ever patented, which I actually own, Improvements in Bagatelles from 1871. But if you take a look at the 30s, the days when Harry Williams first started, the days when David Gottlieb first started, and so on, I think that there are any number of people, and I felt some of it when I was at Williams Bally, and we were doing pinballs from, when I was there from 1988 until we shut down in 99. There were any number of people that really fancied themselves to be designers, that really wanted to do this. And, the days of The Apprentice, which is how Jim Patla and Greg Kamick started as apprentices when they were still at Gordon Tech High School and went over to Bally to work, and then eventually being hired and then becoming, I think, truly two of the more brilliant and skilled game designers from the late 70s. Maybe that is part of it. Maybe there are just some people out there who wish that they had been smart enough, knew the right people, had the funding, whatever it is, to be able to bring their visions, their ideas to life. And maybe there is, God, I don't want to say it, but it's the only word that comes to mind. Maybe there's a sense of resentment.
Little jealousy.
Maybe maybe jealousy, thank you. Maybe there is a feeling of, their own personal entitlement. I can do this. I should be able to do this. Why are they doing it? They're not doing it right. I would do it differently if I only could. And, what about me? What about me? What about me? John Norris was one of the first people, other than myself, truly. I mean, look, I came out of nowhere to be involved with the entire industry, let alone not just to write a book and testify and all the other stuff that everybody knows, but also to design games. I mean, I didn't have any background, per se. But John Norris was a player who became a designer. Lyman Sheets was a player who came out of, a totally different world to become, an incredible programmer. And somebody who I know can design games. Look, Brian Eddy was in the world of video before he switched over. And, his legacy are not all that many games, but the games that he actually wound up working on are truly masterpieces.
Some of the best ever, yep.
And I think that, people wind up, I guess, losing sight. You don't have that same opportunity. I know that Gary and George Gomez have done a lot in terms of trying to bring in new people to try to bring, we'll call it the next generation. Because, look, I'm not getting any younger. Steve Ritchie isn't getting any younger, and nor is Pat Lawler and John Trudeau and some of us old, wizened veterans. Where's the new talent going to come from? And in some ways, it's companies and individuals like Dutch Pinball that come around, and the others that are out there that are trying to make their mark and trying to establish themselves in a way that, God willing, will keep pinball going. I hate to tell you, over the years, the number of times that I was asked, especially, toward the tail end of Williams and Bally, so, Roger, where do you see pinball in 10 years? Is it still going to be around? Take a look at the horse and buggy, what happened there? And it's like, no, it's still going to be around. I used to say, and I still do, that until someone can provide me an entertainment attraction that totally and completely replicates the pinball experience, tactily, sensorily, and so on, there'll always be a need for pinball. And I think that, that's the part that I'm hoping when I look at, in quotes, younger people who are involved, whether they're playing, whether they're designing or trying to offer their insights in some way, shape, or form. So I see that as all being a positive, but going back to the fact of, and you probably chose the right word, maybe there is a sense of jealousy. And maybe that's why that outpouring happens the way that it happens.
Very possibly. Let me ask
Sorry
you.
to go on track.
No, you're allowed to do that anytime on this show.
Probably a little bit more than maybe anybody wants to hear.
No, I doubt that. I think that people are going to be very happy to hear you here. Let me ask you this, because this has come up in my talks with some of the manufacturers, and some people bring this up from time to time. And we don't need exact numbers, but is it cost prohibitive on some level, or is it expensive, or is it more affordable than one might think to attain a license of a famous, whether it's a movie or a TV series or whatever it might be, for a pinball machine on a smaller scale? If you're not Stern Pinball, if you're the next startup company that's in the garage right now, is that within reach, in your opinion?
Well, obviously, we haven't seen Full Throttle yet, just using Andrew as an example. He has a high-profile license, Aliens.
Yep.
No track record or anything else. So I don't want to necessarily pat myself on the back, but maybe I will. I've been working on brand licensing for 27 years. I've probably worked on over 250 different brand licenses: video games, slot machines, pinball, novelty redemption equipment, and things outside the scope of coin-operated amusement games. There isn't anybody that I have not worked with. There isn't anybody I don't have a relationship with, whether it's the professional sports leagues, going back to the days of NBA Jam and NFL Blitz and all the rest of it, on through to, all the movie studios. I think that the advantage that I have in working on behalf of the companies that I work on behalf of is I can get deals at rates that are far better than just somebody going in off the street who's unaware of what the dynamics are. So to answer the question more directly, is it cost prohibitive? It doesn't have to be. I think that when you have individuals who are kind of going out there and don't have a clue, if I'm going out to buy a house and I've never bought a house before and I don't know what the prevailing market is, and I go into something that's a house for sale and they haven't put up the numbers or anything else, and it's like, God, I really love this. I want this house. I'll give you, $400,000 for it. Will you take it? Well, maybe if they would have checked with a realtor or whatever else instead of just doing a drive through the neighborhood, maybe they would have known that the house is on the market for $220,000. Now, if I'm selling my house for $220,000 and somebody offers me $400,000, what do you think I'm going to do?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not going to be foolish. I'll take the $400,000. Thank you very much. And, pocket that difference. So is it cost prohibitive? No, it doesn't have to be. Are there some licenses that are easy to get? Sure. Are there some that become more difficult just because of whatever the asset needs might be? Sure. Some of it is also category specific. I will tell you right now that the deals that I have done the past 23 years on slot machines, those numbers are far different than they would be for a pinball or for a video game or for a novelty game or for a toy for that matter. So again, I think that the misnomer is that, and it goes back to even the Williams Bally days. I know that Gary has felt it. I don't know about Jack, most recently, or even, with the Dutch guys. There's always been that sense that, oh, you're going to upcharge me to cover the cost of the license. Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, if you take a look at what the price points were during the, Williams Bally days from 88 to 99, the price differentials had nothing to do with licenses. If you take a look and go further back to the glory days of Tom Neiman and Bill O'Donnell and that group back in the mid-'70s with Wizard, Captain Fantastic, and all the rest of it, their prices didn't change either. So I think that, if you are attempting to do a license and by doing so you want to offset that by increasing the price of your product and there's not price elasticity necessarily in your category, you're going to get burned. And I think, again, in working on behalf of smaller startups, there's absolutely, number one, an opportunity. Number two, it can be a challenge. But from my standpoint, I don't think that it's an unsurmountable challenge. I'd say that my track record on going after different license themes over the years, and this is across the board for all my projects, I think my success rate is probably about 95 to 98%. There's not too much I've ever missed out on. And there's speculation that, maybe back in the day, we overpaid. We, again, collectively, Williams Valley, never did. Always held the line. Never overspent on anything. And that's going to be the case going forward. And it has been for all my clients and all the categories I work for.
So when you finally left WMS and you decided to start Sharp Communications, was this...
Actually, I'll interrupt for a second.
Please do.
Back in 2000 is when I started Sharp Communications.
Okay. So it was while you were still with WMS.
I was at Williams Valley Midway. Admittedly, pinball was shut down. I came back from a licensing show. I mean, I'll reveal this. If anybody would ever ask, they'll get to hear it now for the first time. Came back from a licensing show that was in, I think back in 2000, it was still in New York before it moved to Las Vegas. It was June. We had gone through some massive layoffs as a company. Midway had already split off from Williams. WMS Gaming was an entity. I was one of 3 shared resources with gaming when we were starting up slot machines. It was myself, finance, and legal. In 1991 was when I started negotiating with Hasbro to secure the monopoly license for slot machines for a company that was not yet building slot machines. It took me 7 years to close the deal, but I was able to close it. I went through 5 different presidents along the way. Anyway, so I came back from the licensing show in June of 2000 and walked in, and about an hour after I was in, I was called into the office by the vice president of marketing and sales and was told, Roger, sorry, guess what? And my first reaction was, wow, okay, who's going to finish up with Major League Baseball? I kept on thinking of all the projects that we had because I was also doing things for Midway Home Entertainment at the time and Atari as well. And he said, but before you pack up anything, gaming wants to see you. And if you know what the layout was, if anybody does that's listening, 3401 California and Roscoe was the main building, the pinball factory. And there was a small building behind it going east toward the river, which is where gaming was. And I walked down the street, and they had just brought in a new president who I'd actually dealt with on a different project for the company some months prior, which was a golf game that we had developed. And sat down, and they made me an offer to be vice president of marketing. And it's one of those things where I guess having familiarity with a company can be good. And someone like myself who tends to be very spontaneous and doesn't really think too much before he says what he says, knew that that was not a position that I wanted. I had already been director of marketing. I kind of knew what that function was. And I looked at my watch instead, and I said, God, it's only been 15 minutes ago since I just got out of a 12-and-a-half-year marriage, which had been the amount of time I'd been with the company. And I offered instead, what if we tried to do something as like a consulting thing for a few months? I don't know, like a per project monthly retainer or something. If it works out, fine. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. And immediately I was asked, what do you have in mind? And it's just like, I have nothing in mind. I don't know. And they threw out a number, and it was like, sure, yes, thank you. Absolutely. I will take that number. And I left. I left. That was in quotes. All right, that's a project. I'm not out of work now. It took me all of about 15 minutes, and I now have work. And as I was walking back to my office down Roscoe, I started thinking, well, I have to come up with a name. I have to start a company. My wife already had Sharp Expressions. My sister had something else overseas that she was using. And Sharp Communications came up, and I wound up incorporating and started on my merry way. Actually, the first 4 or 5 projects that I had were people coming to me. One of them, interestingly, was actually Midway Games to follow up on some projects that I had worked on that had kind of fallen through the cracks in terms of renewing licenses. So I was like, yeah, I have familiarity with that. And suddenly Sharp Communications was formed. I went in a year and a half later, and I was still doing ongoing, and I picked up a whole variety of other projects and what have you, and went in to renegotiate my deal with WMS. We don't have to get into the details why, but instead I was asked, would you consider coming back? and coming back to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, you mean all the stuff I have been doing
Yeah.
and all the stuff I am doing? Sure, I'll come back, but understand something. I have my own company. I have projects. I have existing, clients that I am working with. What I was asked was, and I knew this. I wasn't doing anything that was competitive in the gaming field. I was exclusive to WMS Gaming for slot machines. And I said, no, everything falls outside the scope of that. So the eventual comment was, yes, you could come back, continue doing your thing as long as you don't hang a neon sign outside your office door. So I just want to clarify that Sharp Communications has been in business for 14 years. It was my side business. So at the end of February, when we parted ways, and truthfully, not my decision, and again, something we don't have to go into, I immediately had, my company ongoing, and suddenly there was an outpouring of people wanting to reach out to me saying, hi, now that you're free and clear, love to work on some things with you, and so on. So that has been an incredible transition. I mean, I am incredibly fortunate, number one, to have had the history that I have for an ongoing company for the past 14 years, a client base that has now grown. It wasn't as if I was starting from square one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that when you said
hi. That's great. I did not realize that.
That just started it.
No, you're just now full time in it. I like it. That's good. If somebody's listening and they want to get in touch with you, website, phone call, email, what's the best way to go about that?
I do not have a website. I don't feel the need to. Maybe I should. Who knows? They can contact me through email. The email is sharpcom1, and that's SHARPECOM, the number 1 at AOL. That would probably be the most direct way. There's phone numbers and things, but Josh has already taught me years ago. And again, I'll share with you my naivete. Don't hold it against me, but so I have 2 Facebook accounts, which drives some people crazy. And I was never on Facebook, and somebody had sent me an email, and I have my other email account that you and I had communicated with that, in quotes, is my personal one.
Sure.
Which was the first one. That's what started. And when I had my business starting 14 years ago, I was like, I think I need another email to separate out the personal stuff from the business stuff. It's kind of like setting up a business account at the bank. Anyway, so somebody reached out via Facebook, and I wasn't on Facebook, and it was just like, okay. And I sent back a note to them. And I guess I signed on to Facebook. And I sent back a note, and in the note saying, great, blah, 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 give me a call. Here's my phone number. And I called Josh, and one of those rare occasions, got him immediately. And I said, guess what? I'm on Facebook. And somebody sent me a message. I sent him back a message. And for those who don't know the relationship I have with my sons, it tends to be, I think, somewhat special in its own way, as I smile and cringe at the same time. And Josh said, what did you do? What did you do? And I said, well, I sent him a note, and I gave him my phone number. You did what? Huh? And he said, let me get on the account. You sent something on a wall. And I was just like, huh? What's a wall? They said, that means the entire world can see your phone number. It's like, oh my God, freaked me out totally. So I'm reluctant and hesitant to do anything on Facebook. And then somebody else reached out through my business on Facebook, and I just assumed that everything would all be one, but suddenly I had 2 Facebook accounts, and they kind of, mix and match. So, again, probably revealing far too much for myself. If Josh ever listens to this, or Zach, I'm sure I'm going to get grief.
I can confirm Josh will listen. He listens to all the shows. Zach does not care.
Okay.
That's kind of what I've figured out over there.
Yeah, when it comes to me, it's going to be, I can't believe you said that.
No, that's good.
So, my apologies for just being myself.
No, I love it. I'm actually torn because I was really excited to have you on, but I sort of feel bad that I had you on under the guise of let's talk about Dutch pinball, because there's a million ways we could go talking, and we need to do that in the future. We should sit down and I would love to have your opinion on the new stuff, and that's been something with this show that I've tried to focus on, and I've not wanted to go back and do the interviews that they're great interviews, hearing the history, hearing the stories, but They've been told. I think they've been told, and they're out there. And I'm really interested in guys like you, like yourself, with the knowledge and your take on what's happening now. That's interesting. I think that's.
Oh no, I would love to. I mean, truthfully, I know that I still keep my finger in the pot, if you will, when it comes to design, execution, and what's happening with the games. Where is it going? I can appreciate and understand because of the urgency, if you will, regarding Dutch pinball and the Big Lebowski and all the concern and all the rest of it. And you touched on it before, and you're really true and right with it. There's this immediacy of news that happens. I just did something for somebody overseas. We talked on Friday, and it was posted on Monday. It was like, my God, I can't, I come from a totally different world. When I was managing editor of GQ magazine, we were working in, 3-month to 4-month lead times on some stuff. And now it's 3 minutes to 4-minute lead times. The cycles have changed. The need for answers, the type of dialogue that goes back and forth. I absolutely understand. It's not as if I'm so totally out of it that I don't have that appreciation. So when you get asked to talk, and specifically to hopefully focus a little bit on Big Lebowski, and again, my apologies for kind of straying off topic a little bit. I understand that, and I think that it's great that things can happen as quickly as they do, and hopefully I have calmed some of the fears. Whether or not my presence provides some semblance of sanity for everybody. I'd like to think that what I do and how I do it is trusted. It has value to it. It has experience with it, and I'm not going to get involved or take on things that I don't believe in. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be successful. I know there's going to be bumps in the road. I accept that. But, if I'm working on behalf of people who I feel that I can trust, who are honorable, then, fool once, all right, it's my fault, and I'll never get fooled a second time. But, so far the track record has been pretty good. And as I said, specifically the Big Lebowski, any of the concerns are, I guess, really overblown. I don't know where and how and why it all started the way that it did, other than, as you mentioned, Phil kind of airing all of the laundry and probably misstating a lot of it. And for whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, it seems incredibly destructive to do so instead of just being really truthful. And if he had come out and said, I have some concerns because of, but it's not a question of jeopardizing the future of the license, then that's one thing. But if he's coming out and just kind of lending a voice that has no substantiation and truth, then that's just not right.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in what will probably end up being this will probably end up being 2 full episodes since we've got such good audio here. The first episode, 126, which will be the number, I kind of went through it step by step, and if you're interested, I would encourage you to check that out, because it's the best synopsis I could give you from speaking with Phil literally last night for over an hour and being at Modern Pinball this weekend with Barry. I felt uniquely qualified to put together some sort of opinion on it, since I was sort of in the middle somehow, which was interesting. So
maybe we can talk off air, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and do that. Let's wrap up. Roger Sharp and I are going to talk off air, and I thank you so much for coming onto the show, and we hope that this is the first of many times that we can talk on Coast to Coast Pinball. It is my absolute honor to have you on.
Well, it was my pleasure, truly, Nate. And this is great, and hopefully all the listeners enjoyed the give and take.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
So there you have it, from someone who is as close to the license side of the Big Lebowski situation as you could possibly be. Very insightful. Very, very glad that we were able to do that. I hope that sheds some light on the situation for people. And I want to thank Roger for coming on, sort of like he admitted, not knowing all the details and all the hysterics that happened on Pinside, and just kind of coming in and talking about the facts as he knew them. So I really appreciate his candor, and what a fun time. So in any case, I'm going to sign off. We did almost 2 hours of Coast to Coast Pinball tonight. Sorry for the delays. I think you can see why it took a little bit of time. Thanks very much. We'll have a new episode out as soon as we can get there. So appreciate you listening, and take care of yourselves.